Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking some truly fascinating spiritual source material to look at the somewhat uncomfortable mechanics of human psychology. Specifically, we're zeroing in on a profound theme drawn directly from the text: how absolute, unflinching, honest self-inquiry reveals true freedom. We're going to strip back the layers of human behavior to see what's really driving us under the hood.
So let's kick things off with a massive and honestly kind of provocative question. Are our deepest relationships actually based on love, or are they really just about our own needs? The source material we're looking at today doesn't pull any punches at all. It asks us to look really closely at our attachments and ask ourselves, are we actually loving others, or are we just loving what they do for us?
Okay, part 1, the real birth of attachment and its sensory roots. Let's trace where these intense feelings actually come from.
The source text totally redefines this concept of mo. In English, we usually translate this as attachment or infatuation, but get this, the text argues that what we call attachment is fundamentally just a biological and psychological dependency on getting our 5 senses satisfied. We get attached because someone provides us with pleasant sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches. It's not some mystical, magical bond. According to the text, it's literally just sensory fulfillment.
And it's wild when you look at how this builds chronologically throughout our lives. Think about it. Our very first absolute strongest attachment is to our mom, right? Why? Because she provides all 5 sensory inputs. We see her, we hear her voice, smell her, taste her milk, and feel her touch. As we grow up, that dependency shifts over to friends and eventually to a spouse, who once again fulfills those adult sensory needs. Fascinatingly, the text points out that in later life, when those other attachments start to fade, we often become deeply attached to food. Why? Because food provides 4 out of the 5 sensory inputs, pretty much everything except sound. We are essentially just chasing sensory inputs from the day we are born to the day we die.
Moving on to part 2, the truth of relationships and the harsh reality of utility. Brace yourself, because the text uses a brutally honest example here to reveal the transactional nature of human connection.
It points out this glaring, fascinating hypocrisy in human culture. While someone is alive and, useful to us, we live in Maya Satya. We act like worldly illusions. Building wealth, buying cars, acquiring property are the absolute ultimate truth. We push the people around us to achieve more of it. But the absolute second they die and their physical body loses its utility to us, our tune completely changes. Suddenly we're chanting Ram Nam Satya, declaring that only God's name is the true ultimate reality. The text asks a really piercing question here. Why didn't we tell them this truth while they were alive? Because, the source argues, when they were alive, we needed them to be useful to us.
And this brings us to a really visceral reality about our post-death rituals. The explainer highlights how shockingly fast we pivot from weeping over a loved one to completely sanitizing our lives of them. The moment someone dies, the immediate instinctual reaction is to rush the body out of the house. People even complain about how long the cremation takes, throwing extra wood or sugar on the fire just to speed it up. And then we come home and wash everything: the house, our clothes, even our watches and belts. The very person you claimed you literally couldn't live without yesterday is suddenly treated as something so utterly impure that you have to scrub your entire house just for having touched them. Why? Simply because their body is no longer of any use to you. It's harsh, for sure, but it's such a deeply grounded observation about human utility.
All right, part 3, the ego of my way, and when expectations breed anger. This is where we hit a massive realization about our own internal ego. The whole thing hinges on this phrase, meritocracia, which translates to my way. The text drops a radical idea here. We aren't actually attached to people at all. No, we're just attached to our own expectations being met exactly the way we want them to be met. Our anger, our sorrow, our broken relationships, they're really just manifestations of our ego throwing a massive tantrum because it didn't get its way.
So here's how this plays out in real life. First, we have a need, right? Then we project that need onto someone else. Now, here's the catch. If they act according to our specific meritocracia, our specific way, we reward them by calling it love. But the exact moment they deviate from our script, we feel intense anger and disappointment. The source even brings up the example of strangers. Think about it. You can't just be furiously angry at a random stranger on the street for no reason because you don't have any expectations of them yet. The anger only exists where there's an expectation of utility.
Part 4. Honesty and self-inquiry. Facing the inner truth. Once we swallow that bitter pill about our own selfishness, the source material guides us to the real core of today's explainer, how absolute, unflinching honesty is our only ticket to true freedom.
The teachings use this incredibly surprising modern metaphor. Think about how perfectly, how politely, and carefully you behave the second you realize a camera is pointed at you. You are hyper-aware, right? You're on your absolute best behavior. Well, the text argues that if we were just as acutely self-aware and honest internally, acting as if an internal camera is always recording our true, unfiltered intentions, achieving enlightenment or ultimate spiritual liberation would be completely effortless. It all comes down to stripping away that internal hypocrisy.
To get there, it's a progressive internal journey. Step 1 is recognition, literally just noticing a desire pop up. Then comes observation, being ruthlessly honest enough to admit, I only want this because I want things my way. Next is release, letting go of the need for that person or situation to be useful to you. And finally, arriving at a state of profound peace the text calls kuch nahi chahiye, which translates to wanting nothing. And to be clear, this isn't about being depressed or giving up, it's about being so totally internally complete that you don't need to extract utility from anyone else.
Finally, Part 5. The Path to Liberation. Action without attachment. So how do we actually live this out day to day?
Well, the text maps out 3 specific types of karma, showing exactly how our daily actions dictate what's going on inside us. If you engage in duskarma, which is dishonesty and manipulating others for your own sensory needs, you remain in bandhan, or bondage. If you practice satkarma, honest, grounded living with self-awareness, you achieve mukti, or freedom. But the absolute highest level, moksha, ultimate liberation, is achieved through seva, that selfless service where you expect absolutely zero in return.
And you know, it's incredibly grounding to see what the source material actually considers the ultimate spiritual path. It's not some grand esoteric philosophy where you have to move to a mountaintop. Instead, it's found in real, visceral, everyday actions. The text specifically highlights things like feeding the birds daily and offering water to the thirsty. Why? Because a bird can't pay you back. A bird cannot fulfill your ego's my way. Consistently doing good for creatures that offer zero utility to your ego is the ultimate, practical exercise in honest freedom.
By recognizing that our attachments are largely just dependencies on utility, and by doing the heavy lifting of dropping our ego's constant demands, we can honestly arrive at this point of profound peace. To be able to sit in a room, look at the world around you, and honestly say, I actually want nothing from any of you, is presented not as a tragedy, but as the absolute pinnacle of human freedom.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought from today's explainer. Take a hard look at the relationships in your life right now. I challenge you to examine the true nature of your own attachments. If you stripped away everything you subtly demand from others, the sensory comforts, the utility, the desperate need for them to do things your way, what kind of unshakable, independent freedom would you finally uncover?